All right. And then what questions do you want?
Are we broadcasting?
We're almost broadcasting. Hold on.
Okay, it's number one roadblock to engaging a client.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start recording. As folks are coming on. Yes. Welcome, welcome to those of you that are coming on board with us right now.
I love watching those numbers climb. It's like one of my favorite things to And then it's like an airplane. So it kind of goes up and then it levels off a little bit. And then you think, oh, maybe that's it. And then it keeps going.
There we go. All right, now you're up. All right, so for those of you that are just joining us, thank you for being with us today. What's our number one question, Karen, that we're trying to get them started off with?
Yeah, so put in the chat as you're coming on, what is your number one roadblock to engaging your ideal clients? Your number one roadblock to engaging your ideal clients. If you could just put that in the chat as you're coming in. Welcome, everybody.
All right.
We got the first one. All right. Let's see what it is. Oh, that's from you.
Yeah, no, that's the question. So
right, here's the question. Let's put it up. So
there we go. Thank you, my friend. So we're just taking a minute to some of you have already given us questions as we were preparing for this webinar today. But if you've got additional questions, our number one, as Karen has already said, is what is your number one roadblock to engaging with your ideal clients? Karen has been doing just-in-time design, so she actually was even adjusting this presentation this morning to make sure that she was up to date, given how quickly our environment is moving today.
Yeah, actually, the things that worked a couple of weeks ago are different than what's working now. So every time I do one of these, I ask our door openers in our company what's working for them as they engage executive decision makers and get those meetings for our clients and what is working. And then I update the presentation. So people who might have heard me speak a couple of weeks ago, there's new material on here. So you want to pay close attention.
And as always, we are recording today. A couple of things, we are recording today, so that recording will be available to you all, along with a PDF of Karen's slides. And I would highly encourage you to watch this a few different times and get your team involved as well. One of the things we're finding as we're doing these webinars is there's always something you pull away the first time, obviously, but then if you rewatch it, there's something additional the second time and even the third time.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that would be really important for folks.
Some people are saying the number one roadblock is getting on their calendars, getting the ideal client's time to get in front of the ideal client. Yes, our company, we get our clients in the door with their prospects at the executive level. And if you weren't on a minute ago, I was talking about how I went out to our door openers yesterday and I asked them to tell us what's new, like what's working in the last 3 weeks that might be different than what they did before, and what is the same that people really need to focus on. So I was making slide changes. Like Cheryl Beth wanted my slide deck. It's like, well, wait a minute, I got a few more things to put in there. Getting the initial return call or email.
That's one of the ones that I've heard the most recently, Karen. People are really struggling to get people's attention right now.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that because our door openers are getting meetings for our clients. We have one of our door openers in 11 weeks got 35 meetings with business leaders on behalf of a banking client. So it's possible and it can work. It just has to be done correctly. So we're going to talk about what's working now. Yeah. So
yes, Debbie.
So what's really interesting
I
about the
agree.
timing of this and what's working and what's not is I do believe people are going to be working today, and I believe they are going to be hungover tomorrow. So I think tomorrow might be more of a day I would skip prospect calls than today. Today they're around.
Yeah. All right. It is 4 after, Karen, so I'm gonna go ahead and get us started.
Okay.
So thank you again, all of you who are joining us today. And a big shout out to those of you that I know are going to be listening to the recording, because your schedules were a little bit crazy today. Just a few logistical items before we get started. One, as I said earlier, we are recording this, and that recording will be available. We are also streaming this live on YouTube. So if you'd like to share that, you can go to our YouTube channel, CEO Think Tank, and share with folks. We'd appreciate the shout outs. Please put your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring this morning as Karen is talking. And she wants questions. She loves Karen. Karen, if nothing else, is a participative thought leader. So please put your questions there, and we'll go through them. As she said earlier, we're trying to be as responsive as possible to the issues that people are running into. So if you could do that. And then just raise your hand if you've got a question, and I'm going to be monitoring the participants, and I can unmute you. Just send a chat and say, hey, you've got something to say. Karen, anything else that would be important for them to know logistically?
No, everybody's good. If for some reason you have tech errors, the best thing to do is to just get out and get back in again. And if for some reason your tech just is not your friend today, you'll get the recording afterwards. So don't worry about that. And yeah, so no, we're good to go, Charlotte.
Okay, great. Yes, you are all muted, Deb, and let me know if you want to talk. All right, cool. So I am thrilled to have Karen with us this morning. A very funny story. So when Karen was 11 years old, her neighbor who owned a franchise company told her that she had a great phone voice and wondered if she wanted to try getting appointments for them. She ended up winning tons of awards for this skill, and it opened the door, pun intended, for Karen Kopp to launch her award-winning firm, Kopp Consulting, where she holds the title of Chief Door Opener. And that's exactly what they do, get businesses the executive level prospect meetings that they need to grow. Today, business leaders not only need to know what to do, but also how to do it. And if they can't do it themselves, which resources are available to help them. Kopp Consulting has been named the Sales Outsourcing Provider of the Year, has been on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies for 2 consecutive years. And Karen has not only been a speaker for us over the past few years, but she's an expert on business development. She's co-author of a few books, including the best-selling Biz Dev Done Right. And she's also a faculty member at the Gazelle's Growth Institute. She is a sales messaging coach for the Scaling Up coaches, and I'm one of them that she's helped in the past. And she's the leader of a company that does business development for other companies. She's here this morning to share her expertise in helping you build and rebuild your sales pipeline in a virtual world. Please welcome Karen Kopp.
Thank you, Cheryl Beth. I appreciate that. And we've known each other for many years. And Cheryl Beth said to me that she never knew that my first cold calling job was when I was 11. and look where it's gone all these years later. It's by far my favorite thing to do, and I don't get to do it anymore because I run the company. But I run a company of people who are senior level business developers who are on the phones getting executive level meetings for our clients with their important prospects every day. And so for those of you who are just tuning in at the beginning, one of the things I did yesterday is I went out to our door openers and I said, tell me what's working now over the last couple of weeks that's different than before. And what are you doing that's the same that people really need to know about? And I've peppered that into today's presentation. Feel free to ask me anything. I focus a lot on sales messaging. Most people don't know what sales messaging is. They only know what marketing messaging is. So today we're going to be talking about sales messaging. We're going to do an exercise that Cheryl Beth has been put through, as have the rest of the Scaling Up coaches. And we're going to work on it today. So we're going to do a little bit of work today, as well as learn some things. All right, so we found out from people what their number one roadblock is to engaging ideal clients. And you know what, it's, I have to say, there's usually not just one roadblock, but there are many. And some of the roadblocks may be in blind spots of yours. So as we go through today's presentation, think about whether the roadblock you think you have is really the roadblock that you have. You may need to solve something else, which would make it easier. And you know, Cheryl Beth, like, we all think at 30,000 feet as business leaders. We're taught to think at 30,000 feet. But sometimes the roadblocks and the issues that are preventing you from engaging your ideal clients are happening at 5,000 feet, where nobody looks. 30,000 feet problems are pretty expensive to solve. 5,000 feet problems are not. So as we go through today, think about what I'm saying and whether you can tweak or change something that could eliminate a problem that could be quite expensive to solve. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So what's working to engage the ideal client? That's what we're going to talk about today. What is working? I'll also pepper in what's not working, so you know that as well. But first, in the upper left, finding buyers who are spending. And another way that question actually comes across to me is, where's the effing money? Like, that's what people are asking me these days. Where's the effing money? How do I find it? Because the people who we were selling to before aren't buying as much, or in some cases, they're not buying at all. Some of the people I talk to target industries that were impacted by COVID and now need to find other industries, other prospects, or just approach things differently in order to find the buyers who are spending. So I'm going to give you several different techniques that'll help you identify where you should be spending your time as well. Bottom left, nail the gap message. We're going to spend some time on gap messaging. This is a trademarked messaging methodology that we use, that we've shared with the Scaling Up coaches. And I'm going to explain to you what it is. We're going to talk about words that work better than others. And then you're going to have a chance to create your own gap messaging. Top right, excellence in the what if conversation. That is what's working right now. Not just having a what if conversation, not just having a conversation, but being excellent at having a what if conversation with a prospect. What is that? Well, you'll have to hang around for a few minutes. I'll explain it to you. And then bottom right is helping sellers who are struggling. I did a program a couple days ago with Kathleen Quinn-Vota, who runs Talent Trust, a recruiting firm. And one of the things that she said is that it can be devastating to somebody's psyche to be let go from their jobs, especially in a sales role. And so what are some of the things that you can do to help the sellers who are struggling right now so that they can keep their jobs? And I'm going to give you a whole bunch of ideas on that. And then I have a bonus, and we're hoping we're going to have enough time for this. I have a bonus on what are some methodologies to help you to close the unclosable sales. And let's see, if we don't have enough, I will write an article and I'll send it to Cheryl Beth and she'll send that around. Okay. So let's start with finding buyers who are spending. Now, let's not focus on the fact that these little guys are not social distancing, but let's focus on the fact that there's only one out of many who may be right for you. And that could be your reality. You may have a reach campaign going on where you have to reach a lot of people in order to be able to identify who the few are, who are exactly right for you. As I said before, the ideal clients you had may no longer be your ideal clients, and the ideal centers of influence who you use to get the referrals, they were the ones who gave those referrals to you, may no longer be the right centers of influence to get you to the people who are going to be spending. So it's time to rethink all of this, especially from an efficiency standpoint. There's only so much time in the day. So if you're spending a lot of time on people who aren't right, it doesn't leave you a whole lot of time to reach out to the people who are right. So this whole conversation will take on an efficiency element as well. But let's think about these prospects, because when people talk to me, they use the word prospect or decision maker or lead. But one of the things that is really missing from those terms is the flesh and blood associated with the fact that these people are just people. They go to work for a reason, and it's not to take your call. It's so that they can make the money they need to make. They can do the things they want to do in their career and for their families. That's why they go to work. And so tuning into what's really important to them, especially how life has changed for them, is going to help you do a better job connecting and engaging those right people. So let's think about them for a second. Take a walk in their shoes. How did this year's events change their plans, their goals, and their role? Like for Cheryl Beth, reaching out to business leaders and helping business leaders. Well, I imagine, Cheryl Beth, the plans that these business leaders had in place in the beginning of the year went out the window in many cases, right around April or May. And they had to start from scratch, reeling, and figure out what they're going to be doing now. And those are your prospects. For the people on this call, what about your prospects? I know we have a marketing company on the call today. Well, there are a lot of marketing people who were furloughed out there. How has their world changed? Reaching out to the same people who you were contacting before, you may have a very different result now, depending on what's happening for them in their world. So it's really important. This empathy piece is to think about the other people and what's happening for them. So this is participatory in the chat. What do you think this lady's thinking about? What do you think? Cheryl Beth, while we're waiting for people to write in the chat, what do you think this lady's thinking about?
Probably something nice, right? Something fun, something, maybe she had a great evening the night before with her husband and she's thinking back on it.
Right. So what else, you guys? Somebody will put something in the chat. Oh, she just made a great sale. All right. What else? Somebody on one of my programs. So she just won a deal. After work happy hour. Yeah. Somebody once said Starbucks. She just ordered with Starbucks. She looks like she just had a good idea. A new job. She might be looking for a new job. That's right. So there's a lot of different things that she could be thinking about. What is she not thinking about? What do you think she is not thinking about?
She just lost a deal. Thanks, Robin.
Joe says COVID.
Of course.
Laundry, pandemic, how bad things are at work. Yeah. She's not thinking about stress. Yeah. Not thinking about problems. But you know what else she's not thinking about? She's not thinking about you. Right? She is not thinking about you. She's thinking about herself and everything that's going on in the world. So there are a lot of faulty assumptions when it comes to prospects, that it's important as we go into this conversation to talk about what is a faulty assumption for your prospect, right? One faulty assumption is that they're going to call you if they need you. Many sellers and many business leaders operate under this faulty assumption. And please don't get caught by that, because if someone else contacts a competitor of yours, contacts one of your important prospects, and you're sitting there thinking they're going to call you if they need you, but somebody else is talking to them, you could lose. If you're not talking to your prospects, someone else will. Exceptionally important to remember that. I'm going to just shut my chat there. Okay. And that they'll inform you of changes. In fact, one of our clients, like when we were getting our clients ready for the door opener service, we will interview a few of our clients' clients. And one of our clients, they had this wonderful relationship. Pre-COVID, they were going out to dinner once a quarter. And I had asked our client, do you have all of their business? And he said, yes, we do. And I said, are you sure? Yes, we do. And so our messaging strategist asked his client, do they have all of your business? And our client's client said, well, in fact, no, they don't, because we have a new international division and they have a different vendor that they use. And when we brought that information back to my client, he was stunned, because it would have been very simple for him to ask the question, what business don't we have, and to get that business. He never asked that question. They never informed him that there was a new international division. And so therefore, not only did he not have all the business, but he could be in a precarious situation, because if that other company starts encroaching on his area, he could lose his client altogether. And that they know what they need. Now, this one is more important than it ever was. Most people out there are not exactly sure what they need. They know they need something different, but they don't know what it is. And you, as the expert in what you offer, it is your role to talk to your clients and your prospects to help them understand what they need now that things are different, and how your solutions fit in and can make their lives better. So it brings us to the subject of who is spending, and it does kind of feel like one of these shell games that you look under one shell, nope, not there, another shell, nope, not there. Well, what if you were just looking under the shell where the money was? How about that? Wouldn't that save you a whole lot of time? So I've been talking a lot about leveraging trigger events now. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about is trigger events. So what's a trigger event? I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. The first one is actually for our company. We are leveraging a trigger event that's going on in banking right now. I talked about it earlier as people were just coming on, but right now there are a whole slew of business leaders out there who didn't have such great experiences with their banks. It was either positive, very positive, or it was very, very negative as a result of PPP, whether or not somebody has 500 employees or more than 500. And so those people who are out in the market right now who had bad experiences may be very open to a conversation with a new bank, but banks don't have enough capacity as they're protecting their current customer base to go out there and talk to all the business leaders who could be out there who need to be directed to them. That's where we come in with our door opener service. We can help them talk to more business leaders who are in the market to change than they can talk to on their own. So we are leveraging a trigger event that would be affecting somebody's top line revenue and the number of customers that they have. You can think about trigger events to identify them and what's going on in industries that you're targeting by thinking about somebody's income statement, right? So I just talked about a trigger event that was affecting top line revenue, but there could be trigger events that are affecting profitability. There could be trigger events that are happening in the middle of the income statement, like the supply chain or the labor pool, like what's happening. In fact, we had a client in the promotional products industry, and when COVID hit, he had a whole bunch of orders he couldn't ship because his manufacturer was closed because of COVID. Well, for a competitor manufacturer who noticed that there was that trigger event going on, that manufacturer could have contacted all the people who could possibly be using these manufacturers and create urgency that wouldn't otherwise exist, and a whole new client pool. So when you think about who you're targeting, don't just continue to target the people you've always targeted because their needs may have changed. Take a look at the wide world of prospects and make them smaller. Identify trigger events. Even if you have more than one trigger event, it's fine. But for each particular group that's facing a trigger event, you'll have a group of prospects and you'll have specific messaging that discusses that trigger event and why it's so important to come to the table virtually and have that meeting. Trigger events. I can't say enough good things about it. In fact, we have stats from our door opener team that when we're leveraging a trigger event on behalf of our clients, we will get the meeting in half the touch points that we will versus a client who is not leveraging a trigger event. So think about that for those people who put in the chat that they're trying to get more meetings. Think about whether you're leveraging a trigger event with the right prospect group as well as the right messaging. Shifting dollars, like
yeah. A quick question there from somebody. What How would you go about having that conversation? Would you get your team together on, in a Zoom call or just on a brainstorming session to, like, what would be the mechanism that you would have people implement that,
Yeah, exactly. I would do a brainstorming session, and it doesn't have to just be with your leadership team. It could be your customer service team. It could be your sales team. You have no idea where this really good idea is going to come from. I mean, pre-COVID, we had a client in Canada, and Canada was facing a labor shortage, and this was a staffing firm. They had a methodology for gobbling up certain kinds of labor, and we went out to the market and talked about that and created pre-sales, which was unheard of because we knew that that was happening, that labor shortage was a trigger event, created a prospect list. They were already fearful. The prospects knew it was happening. Now it's just a matter of what was this company going to do about it. So yes, I suggest, and I can go on and on with these kinds of trigger events, but I would suggest putting up a virtual paper and having a brainstorm session. But in terms of how you think about that, put up an income statement, a rudimentary income statement. The business leaders on the call, you probably are familiar with that. You can think about it off the top of your head. Some of your employees, maybe not so much. And so you can give them the categories where they can think about these ideas, and then just keep brainstorming, keep brainstorming, keep brainstorming until you find one. Somebody said to me, well, there's not a whole lot of people who are going to be in this universe of prospects. And I say that's okay, because you can always have more than one, but that group of prospects is going to feel more urgency and come to the virtual table for a meeting sooner than others. That's low-lying fruit. But your competition is not thinking this way, and they're probably not segmenting the market this way. And I'm telling you that this works, and it works to get meetings in less time based on what we've been doing. Good, Sharbeth?
Great, thank you.
Okay, good. Shifting dollars. So in the beginning, people were saying, oh, all the budgets were cut, budget. Well, budget is a funny thing. Just because somebody says they don't have budget doesn't mean they don't have budget. When it comes to a budget, there are a lot of different categories in any one person's budget. And while you may not have money over here, it doesn't mean that you can't take money from here and put it here, as long as you are not going outside the parameters of your overall budget. Sellers often don't think about that. When somebody says, well, I don't have any budget for it, they say, thank you very much, and then they're done. But that's the time to peel the onion, peel it back. And that's one thing about not having budget. But then even people, if there really is no budget, I used to have this picture with a guy with pockets, like he's got his pockets out, there's nothing in them. But there's usually funding for a good idea. If there's something that's an incredibly good idea, most business leaders out there will find a way to fund it. So if you can present it that it is a good idea, something that will help them in a way that will make their lives better, they will consider it. And so think about that. Again, peeling the onion back. Yearly needs, that's happening now. And people are thinking about 2021 and what they need for next year. Have those conversations, get those meetings on the calendar with the people you know, as well as prospects who fit into the right group, your ideal prospects right now, and discuss not just one deal, but discuss all of next year, because they may appreciate being able to get that behind them, and it will create a bigger sale and protect your client base for a longer period of time. Budget approval season, this applies to certain industries. They're going through budget approval season. And I'll talk on both sides of this. In one way, you definitely want to be on the upfront. If someone's going into budget approval season in 3 months, you don't want to wait until they're in it to start having a conversation with them. You want to start the conversation 3 to 6 months before that, so that you could be in their consideration set as they're going for approval. Otherwise, you may be too late. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, just because somebody has a budget approval season doesn't mean you can't overturn something in the middle. Often when I'm talking to people and they say, oh, we have budget approval season, and I start peeling back the onion, I find ways that our clients can change their prospect's mind and what they chose to do before the next budget approval season. So make sure you're capitalizing on all time periods of the year. Use it or lose it dollars, that's kind of happening now as we speak. People will either have some budget left over, some of them don't, but if they do, they might be able to do the work in this time period. And I just had this conversation actually with somebody not that long ago, and they sell like a $300,000 solution. So they said there's no way that they can do all of this work in the time period that's left this year. I said, okay, fine. Can you do any of it? Can you do an assessment piece of it? Can you do an evaluation? Can you do the first stage of it? Because if you can break it apart and leverage the use it or lose it dollars right now, even if it's with a smaller piece of the project, then you can do the rest of it next year when they have more budget. So just because somebody says they're not spending doesn't mean they're not spending. And there are people who are spending. It's just a matter of figuring out where that money is. And I can't say enough about the finding those trigger events. Questions about that? Anybody? Where's the money? So we just dealt with the bottom right circle on this sales sweet spot chart, which is urgency. So all of the things we just talked about will create prospects for you who are experiencing more urgency than others. That's good news, because that means they're going to come to the table sooner to have that initial conversation, and they're going to move through the sales cycle faster if you can nail that urgency piece. But you also want to make sure that these prospects find you to be an obvious solution. And that has to do partly with targeting and partly with what you say, which we're going to get into what you say in just a second. And then we want to overlap that with people who will willingly pay what you want to charge for your services. It is very rare that someone hits my doorstep and they're the low price provider in the market. Usually they want people to pay them for the value that they provide, but not every prospect out there is going to pay for value. Some people will only pay on price no matter what you say or do. You could be the most convincing in the world and they will never move forward and pay what you want to charge. Well, it's really important that you identify that this kind of prospect is this kind of prospect early on in your sales conversations. And I'll give you an example. Like one of the things when we do our door opener service, our clients have to sell something that's big enough to warrant the investment in our services. So I will always ask, tell me about the lifetime value of a client for you. Because if their lifetime value is really small, like let's say $1,000 a year, chances are that they're not going to willingly pay, no matter what I say, the investment in our services. So they're not a good prospect for us. But that doesn't mean they don't have issues. Your prospects will have issues, especially like for Cheryl Beth, every business leader out there has a problem that needs to be solved. There's not one person I can think of who doesn't have a problem that needs to be solved. But not every one of those prospects for her out there will willingly spend time and money for a scaling up coach. And so while she wants to help everybody, altruistically, of course, she has a business to run. And so she needs to be able to identify those people who will spend time and money for a coach. And let's see, we have one question. We have somebody in the chat.
Yeah, I had asked you, I had asked you because all of this behooves the urgency piece, right? And having the conversations, Karen, behooves you actually having that conversation. I mean, and I know that you are brilliant at getting people to return your phone calls or return your emails. Can you just share some of the practices that you found to be most effective at actually getting people to like pick up the phone or respond to an email, given that that seems to be an issue that a number of folks are having?
Yes, I'm going to ask you to wait till we get to the sales messaging piece.
Okay,
and ask
great.
me that again, because you're talking about technique, but we can't really focus on technique until A, we know who we're talking to, and B, we know what we're going to say. Because you can have all the techniques in the world, but if your sales message is not spot on, your techniques are not going to help you. You can have the best sales message in the world and the best techniques in the world, but if you're not talking to the right people, none of those other things are going to help you. So we're building a little bit right here, but definitely, I have a lot of answers on that question from our door openers, and I have them all here for you. So definitely let's make sure we spend time on that. Okay, so when it comes to targeting the right people, and this is really important for the leaders who are out there, if you have a sales team, it's very possible that they're spending a huge chunk of their time on people who are not the right prospects. In fact, if you have a lot of sales that are stuck in the pipeline and you can't get them to close, chances are they really weren't the right prospects to begin with. So this is a chart that will help you to help your salespeople make sure that they're spending their time where they should spend their time. So if you look on the first line, Sandy Cole over there at Company X hits every single one of those criteria: obvious solution, willing to pay, urgency, geography, the right title, from the right size company, and all that other good stuff. Sandy Cole deserves your seller's time and attention. But look at Evan Hill at Company Y. Not willing to pay, not likely. So if there are check marks that are missing, you really have to question whether Evan deserves your company's time and attention. And this is one way to organize this for your sales team. When you're having conversations in your weekly sales meetings, focus on this. Because if they get the target right and they get the message right, then the techniques are relatively easy to incorporate in order to get these calls back. Okay, so now that you know the kinds of people who are going to be more right for you than others, how do you connect with them, especially in a virtual world where you're not going to conferences, trade shows, and in-person networking? And one of the things I can share with all the leaders who are on the phone right now is that this is a huge problem. There are many sellers and business leaders who are struggling to make this shift. Some people are just waiting, hoping it will change, but hope is not a strategy, and it's not going to change anytime soon. I can tell you that in-person prospect meetings are going to, and the conferences and things like that are probably going to come back right around the same time as concerts. So it's going to be a little while, and you don't wait. In fact, when they do come back, this is how people are going to look, because they're all going to be masked. Whereas right now, if you can connect with them, especially once you get that meeting, you are most likely in a virtual situation and you can see their whole face. So how do you connect with these prospects? Well, first of all, remember that clients can be prospects too. Have you reached out to all of your clients who now fit into your new ideal client criteria? There could be a whole section of your clients who still fit and a section of your clients who don't fit. Make sure that for those who do fit, that you're selling them everything that you can sell them, or, put differently, everything that would make their lives better. Who else in their companies have a mutually exclusive pocket of money that you have not yet introduced yourself to? That's low-lying fruit. Sometimes sellers have a hard time leveraging a relationship with one decision maker within a client organization and getting to the next one. There's language we have for that. If your sellers are struggling with that, call me, because that's easy. I can share with you that language. No-go prospects. I'd go back over the last 2 years. If somebody asked you to give them a proposal, they liked you enough to include you in that decision set, who knows what happened with that project? Maybe it never happened. Maybe it happened and they didn't like the person they chose. Of course, make sure that these prospects fit in with your ideal client profile now that you've changed it, and then make sure that you're keeping in contact with them. We have people who are coming out of the woodwork. Things have changed, and we've known each other for a while, but because of the pandemic, things are now different. They need to get in front of more prospects, and their sellers just need more leads at the top of their funnel, and they're calling us, and we're starting the door opener program for them. So that could happen for you, people you talked to a couple of years ago. Ask for introductions. I do not like using the word referral. I feel like it's an in-your-face kind of a term. It's too stark. I'd rather say, who else? Who else do you know who has a need for? And then you fill in the blank. You can ask your clients and you can ask your centers of influence. But as I talked about before, your centers of influence may now be different if your ideal clients are different. The people who are going to refer them to you may be different than the people who you've always worked with before. Be careful where you're spending your time. Virtual networking groups. Okay, there's a lot of these going on. And what I'm going to say about this is really no different than I would have told you when things were happening in person. Yes, participate in the right virtual networking groups. That means if it's a center of influence networking group, make sure that that center of influence also serves a similar clientele as you. If they don't, what are you doing there? Because the back and forth referrals may not be the most efficient way for you to spend your time. But what you can see on the right-hand side, I've put the one-on-ones. That's where the magic happens. Just showing up in a big group, not a lot of magic is going to happen there. Pick out, let's say, the top 5 people who serve the exact same group as you, who may have a similar philosophy, a business philosophy as you, and let them know, listen, as you're growing your business, you may have business to throw to them and vice versa. So it makes sense to sit down and have that conversation virtually. And once you do that, just because you do it once doesn't mean that you get to the bottom of it. I have not been successful in having one of those conversations unless I have an hour. If we schedule a half an hour, we're always scheduling a second half an hour. And you want, first of all, to be able to talk about philosophy and where you're spending your time, where they're spending their time. But then you want to go into specifics. Tell stories of yours. Have them tell stories of theirs, because in doing so, it's going to spur ideas of people you know they should meet and vice versa. So remember those one-on-ones. If you just show up to a group, it's really not the same thing. I wish I thought of this. I didn't. Actually, it was a client of mine who thought of this. She took a role in her prospects industry group. And actually, one step further than that, she took a certification class, the same certification class that all of her prospects have to take. She didn't need it to do her job as the business leader of the company, but what did it do? It put her in the same virtual setting with her most important prospects every week for 12 weeks. They were best buddies by the end of that 12 weeks. And here she had a bunch of the exact right prospects. So take a role in your prospects industry group or take a certification class if that applies to them. I already talked about offering to refer someone business, and I always save direct outreach for the last, because people often would rather put a stick in their eye than do this work. But I have to tell you, I've owned this company. This is my 21st year in business. And if you have something important to say to somebody important, there is no reason why you can't pick up the phone or write them an email that's meant just for them and say something important and ask for that meeting. I can tell you it works across industries. We support many different kinds of industries, and it works. So while I wanted to give you lots of other options, don't forget, when you identify your trigger event, you may have a whole group of prospects that just require direct outreach. Don't be afraid to say something important to those people and pick up the phone and do that. Let's see, we have a couple of questions in there, Cheryl Beth, right?
Yeah, so Debbie had actually had a question, and I didn't know if you were going to get to this, or we could go into it. How to discover if they're actually willing to pay and how to determine their budget. Do you have some best practice?
Yeah, so
for that?
Yeah, well, one of the things I had said was, and it depends on your industry in particular, like when we say willingly pay, we want to find out if it's going to make a really good sense for them to invest what you want them to spend in the services. So if Debbie is a marketing company and let's say she charges $100,000 for her services a year, which I don't believe is the case, but if it is, there are certain kinds of companies that are never going to pay that. A startup without funding would probably not be able to invest in that, right? So work backwards to figure out who is going to be able to willingly pay, who is going to find that to be a really good idea. I'll give you another example. There was a company years ago before COVID in the meeting planning industry, and they were targeting pharmaceutical folks. And there are a lot of meeting planning companies out there. Competition was really stiff. And one of the things that we talked about as we were going into messaging is that not everybody out there is going to be willing to take a risk on a new meeting planning firm, especially if they're in a big company, and champion that new idea. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what kinds of people would take a risk like that? So out of the target, which includes size of company, level of decision maker, geography, and industry niche and all that other good stuff, we wanted people who would willingly pay. And what we did is we made the assumption, well, actually, before we made the assumption, we did some research and we found out that all of their clients who did take that risk and bring them in to champion them had previously won awards, either in their industries or in their companies. And so we applied that same thinking and made the assumption that those people were more likely to take a risk and bring in a new vendor, an underdog, into a big company. And we segmented the prospect list according to that research. So there's lots of different ways to slice and dice this, but you want to make it obvious to the other person that this is going to be a good idea, willingly pay. You want to get as close as possible to knowing that before you open up outreach for them and start talking to them from an efficiency standpoint. But there's only so much you can know sometimes until you get someone on the phone and you have that conversation. So I hope that was helpful. I found that if you give information and ideas to centers of influence, it goes a long way when they refer business. So John, that's exactly right. And in fact, I recommend with centers of influence that you ask for email introductions, because that gives you permission to contact the other person by email. So you would say, thank you, John, and hello, Sue, and that now you're connected by email. But in order for your center of influence to do a good job making that introduction, not only do they need to know what you're looking for, but I like to supply them with a 3 to 5 sentence blurb, so that all they need to do is take my 3 to 5 sentences and put it in the introduction. And now they're communicating about us the way that I want them to communicate about us, with the right words that I feel are important. A lot of people don't have this blurb. In fact, I asked somebody recently, and I had somebody to introduce him to, and I asked him to send me a blurb. And he sent me the longest email in the history of email and 2 attachments. And it took me a week before I could even read it. So I'm going to talk about length of emails in a little while, but I mean, it took me about a week before I read it. And then I don't have the time to go picking through that long email and find the 3 to 5 sentences that I need. So I wrote him back and I asked him to please pick 3 to 5 sentences for me so that I could make the introduction. So make it easy for your centers of influence to give you these introductions. Okay. So nailing your gap message. So we're going to go into this. Before we do, let's hit what that question that you had. Let's hit that a little bit.
About trying to get a hold of people nowadays when they don't return your emails and phone calls.
Yeah, right. And so one of the things that's really important right now is phone. I can't stress it enough. We're going to talk about that in a little while as well, but it is so incredibly important. I don't know about you guys as business leaders out there, but I get 150 to 250 emails a day. I cannot read them all, and I don't either. Anything that has the word COVID in it, I skip right over it. I know it's cold, and they've done absolutely no thinking about me at all. So while I'm sitting there bypassing all of these emails that are not well-written emails that are meaningful to me from a sales perspective, I'm not talking about marketing and awareness building. I'm talking about sales and building a relationship. I sit next to my cell phone and I sit next to my work phone because we've been virtual for 20 years. But right now everybody's sitting next to their cell phones and in some cases their work phones. And none of the people who are trying to sell me all these things are calling. And if they did, they would have 100% share of voice, because that people are not calling. Why aren't people calling? Because it's easy to hide behind an email. It's easy just to zip that baby off. It's easy to zip off 50 of the exact same email, but remember, your prospect is only reading one of yours. So I do have some examples of things not to do later on in the session. I'll talk about that. But if you want more response from your prospects, you need to identify the right target. You need to identify people who really need to hear from you. You need to say something that's so incredibly impactful, which is exactly what we're going to go into right now. How do you create the sales messaging that is so incredibly impactful for them, not for you, but for them? And then you need to deliver it in a format that's relevant. So it's not a long email. It's not an email alone. It's a phone call, but what kind of phone call? A lot of people don't do phone very well. And if you don't do phone well, you probably don't want to do it because it's not going to help you to open up a relationship with somebody. So the other piece is you have to stick with it. You can't say the same thing week after week after week according to a script. Life doesn't happen according to a script. You need to think about people as people. Do your research, incorporate the insights that you learn about what your prospect is facing into the reason why that person should meet with you. Why would it be the best decision that person makes all week to knock 3 people off their calendar and make room for you? When people ask me the question, Charbeth, that you just asked me, like, why am I not getting a call back? I ask them this question. I'll say to them, why do you deserve this meeting? Why would meeting you be the best decision this prospect makes all week? And people, by and large, cannot articulate that to me. If you can't articulate that to me and I'm non-threatening, how are you going to articulate that to your most important prospect in a performance moment?
Karen, say that one again, because I think that is a really important question.
Which one?
I want the one about why you would. Why would you?
Yeah, why is meeting you the best decision this prospect is going to make all week? I don't know about you guys, but my calendar is completely full. I come in on a Monday morning and I just want to cry. Like there's not one single space open in my calendar. We used to leave 15-minute time blocks in between and we stopped doing that because then I would lose 2 hours at the end of every day. So like I'm back to back to back to back to back. Why would I cancel 3 other meetings and make room for you? And that would be, in my opinion, the best decision I make. You must be able to articulate that, right? And so it's not just the words you use, but it's also the format. You could use the most phenomenal words and they could be buried in a crappy email that will never get read. You may have a wonderfully written email that has crappy words, or you may leave a crappy voicemail for somebody and now you started a bad relationship. I'm going to show you an example. So something I got yesterday, and I was kind enough to hide the guy's last name because it's just a crappy example of a LinkedIn message. So you must be able to do these things right and build a relationship that the other person will value. And that includes every single touch point. Remember I said at the beginning of this that it's not always with 30,000 feet. This stuff is happening at 5,000 feet. Sales managers don't often look here. Business leaders don't often look here at their salespeople and exactly what they're writing, what they're saying. And I actually have a diagnostic tool. I haven't unveiled it anywhere, so you guys are the first to see it. That will help you identify where you're getting stuck in a conversation. Like it takes this great magnifying glass and puts it over an individual conversation and helps you to diagnose. If you maybe just change how you're having that conversation, then you're going to clear the muck out of your path and you will get that meeting. I can go on and on about that and probably will as we go through this. But right now we're going to do this exercise. And this is the gap messaging. It is our trademarked messaging methodology called the Kopp gap method of sales messaging, not marketing messaging. What is that? Why is this so important? This is the answer to I already have a vendor, or I know others who do what you do, or I already have an internal solution in place. Thanks anyway. The Kopp method of sales messaging is the answer for that. You must nail that. Must nail that before you start talking to your most important prospects, and so must your salespeople. It will clearly articulate why you are of more value. And, you know, in marketing messaging, people talk about the value proposition. Remember, that's not a sales term. That's a marketing term. Very important in your marketing, not so much in messaging. Now, these things are not out of alignment, but the sales messaging is more specific than your marketing messaging. It clearly states why you are of more value, not why you're different. Many people spend a lot of time thinking about why they're different. Guess what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares why you're different at all. They only care why you're of more value to them. And this will help you articulate that. It is specific to a prospect group or an individual, and it's also specific to an offering. So if you have multiple offerings, you need to decide, am I using one offering as a point of entry strategy when I start talking to a prospect, or am I using an umbrella strategy? And I can do all of these things. So we could talk about this, this, or this, right? You must pick in order to make your GAP method of sales messaging most effective. And you can have more than one, right? It really depends on who you're talking to. When it's done correctly, it is so powerful that it can render your competition irrelevant. So we're going to go down from 5,000 feet to 1,000 feet, and we're going to be talking about word choice. Then I'm going to share with you this methodology, and then you're going to have a couple of minutes to try it out for yourself so that you can start working on this. Okay, so the person with the best words wins. I've seen this over and over again. It's not always the best competitor who wins, who the best person for the job, but it is the person who has the best words. So it's critical that you think about every word you're saying and whether your words in the spoken word and in the email to one person is working as hard as it possibly can for you. So if you change the word, you change the outcome. I'm going to share with you just a couple of word pairs. Interested versus serious. I work with people who are interested in growing their business, if I was Cheryl Beth. Or I work with people who are serious about growing their business. Which one do you think she should use, right? So I'll give it to you. It's serious.
Carla. Yep. Thank you, Carla. Right answer.
Change the word, change the outcome. I can show you how this can work, or I can prove how this can work, right? Prove will work much harder for you than show. Our clients are very satisfied with our services. Our clients are grateful for our services. So think about when you select the words that you select, and it is a deliberate choice what you say, or at least it should be. Choose the ones that are working as hard for you as they can. Okay, here is the GAP method. I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to give you an example, and then you're going to work on it for a couple minutes on your own. Anybody can, and you fill in the blank, but not everyone can, and you fill in the blank. And then you add a for example. It's very simple, and when it's done well and correctly, it can render your competition irrelevant. So for us, it would be anyone can say they can get you some appointments, but not everyone who can get you some appointments can get you executive level appointments with the most important prospects for you. For example, one of our clients had 168 meetings with 55 executive level prospects. They they closed 1 in 3 after closing 1 in 5 when we first met them. And they have experienced 500% return on their investment so far. They just signed up for another 18 months of service. So that gives you a little bit of an example of what that is. And Cheryl Beth has one as well. You want to share yours, Cheryl Beth?
Sure. Karen coached me on this several years ago. I'll try and hopefully I'll shine as her student. We'll see. Any growth coach will help a leader to make changes and to leverage their strengths, but not every growth coach who works with leaders also works with their teams and provides them with the tools and the resources and community to grow profitably. And without that, without what we call the trifecta of CEO, teams, and tools, you won't get the results as quickly and as effortlessly and as painlessly as others will. And that's what we do. And DMI Partners, which you can check out on our website at ceothinktank.com, did exactly that. They involved not just the CEO, but their team and the scaling up operating system, along with the access to resources to grow their company and succeed through this very, very trying time. They've actually met their growth goals and exceeded them.
So incredibly important distinction between any coach who can help you to grow your business versus the kind of coaching that you would get from Cheryl, Beth, and team. So the one piece of feedback I would give to Cheryl Beth is that while she's writing, she had written that, we've worked on that in writing, and it is on her LinkedIn profile. In the spoken word, it needs to be shorter. So it's awesome that you have what you have. So now in the next iteration, it's time to reduce the number of words and make sure that every word is working as hard as it can for you. Because in the spoken word, it does need to be condensed and delivered conversationally. Anybody can, and you fill in the blank, but not everyone can, and you fill in the blank. For example, so now you are going to get a chance to work on yours. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I wish I can give you more than that, but if I do give you more than that, we are going to be time challenged. So here's some ukulele music for you. Okay, fill this in for yourself. A minute. Okay, so I'm going to shut the music off, and let's see. Okay, you want to read Todd's?
Yeah. Well, do we want to have Todd? Todd, would you be willing to read yours for us? Can I allow him to talk? And Pat Sanford's got another one too. Todd.
Yes. So can you
Sure.
unmute Todd? So hi, Todd.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. I'm so glad you're here. So as you share this, what I want you to do is follow the instructions up at the top. Tell everybody what you do in one sentence, which is going to be super hard, but you have to do it. And then tell everybody who your ideal client is in one sentence. Then you read your gap message that you've shared in the chat. And then I'll give you just a little bit of feedback on it. Okay?
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I did, sorry about that. I didn't quite, I was prompted to throw this in the chat. So I think I was actually thrown to the wolves here, but I'll give it a whirl. This feels like a setup, but let me go for it. We're Fairtech. We help customers execute digital marketing strategy. Okay. Our ideal client are companies that are looking for significant growth and to use their website as a sales tool. Anybody can basically get you traffic to your site, but not everyone in our space cares about the conversion of the lead. We helped one of our customers increase traffic by their site by more than 40%. And then in doing so, we created over 2,900 conversions, resulting in a little more than $750,000 in first-time appointment revenue over a 3-year period.
Okay, that's really good. So I love the numbers. I love that you have the traffic to your site and all of that. So my question to you is, if the right person who really wants to have significant growth and they want that to come through their website, if they heard this, what would they say? Would they nod their heads in agreement and say, oh yeah, that's a big deal? What would they say?
I think the answer to that is understanding if this is actually a pain for the client. Because a lot of times I think we go into like the prospecting process and we feel like every prospect has the same amount of pain. So I probably would have done a little more research in understanding that, like we have some tools that we use to basically figure out, like, their site might actually have some traffic issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe do a little research to figure out, instead of making a hunch that they have this issue, I feel like I might do a little more digging to understand that this really is an issue. So if this truly is an issue for them, then this is going to resonate pretty solidly.
Right. So the one caution I would say is that if there's not a way for you to research that, and even if you research, they may not be aware of it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll tell you what, that's a really good point, because it's funny because in this space, a lot of the people that we talk to, they aren't aware of like a lot of the analytics that we can pull. Mm-hmm. So it really becomes more of like a selling process, or I'm sorry, less of a selling process and more of an education process.
Right. So the thing is, when it comes to this gap messaging piece, is that if it's a disconnect, it's not going to work.
Sure.
So it has to be a very strong connect. If you're not 100% sure that this person is going to agree with it, I'm going to recommend coming in with a different angle. Right. Okay. So it could be similar to what you have, but you might need to either change your target, know something more about your target and be more certain, or adjust what you have as your message so that you're sure whoever hears this is going to nod. If they're going to nod and be like, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't think about it that way, then you've nailed the gap message. If not, then you have a chance that this could be a disconnect, in which case it's not going to work for you. So this is a great example of how important getting this right is. So you may have to be a little bit more broad in your target in order to get the gap message that works. That's a slam dunk each time, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No. Thank you for being the guinea pig here.
Even if you were thrown to the wolves, Karen, did you want another one?
Let us keep moving. And if at the end we have more time, we can come back for more. But the one thing, actually, I will make you guys this offer. If you want to send me your gap message and you want like 15 minutes with me, and I'll give you some guidance on it if we don't get back to more, that's fine. I'm going to ask you to do, number one, you're going to tell me what you do in one sentence. You're going to tell me who your ideal client is in one sentence. And then you'll read your gap message, and I'll just give some guidance, just like I did a minute ago, if that helps. Sometimes it's just a matter of narrowing it in order to get to the one that works.
I'm laughing about the ukulele.
Ukulele means first of all, congratulations for knowing how to spell ukulele. I think that's a big deal. And I wanted upbeat music, right? Because this is a very serious topic, and I wanted you guys to have some upbeat music. Sorry, it distracted you. All right. So the next thing that's working is the excellence in the what if conversation. I wanted to make sure that we do a good job here, because I don't hear anybody talking about the what if conversation. And this is what we're finding. Our door openers are finding that this is what's working. And while we do send emails and phone calls, but not an email to 1,000 people, we don't do email marketing. We do an email to one person and a phone call to one person. So there are a couple of things about that. One is that in order to have a conversation with someone, you actually have to call them. And this is something that people are not doing. As I said before, they're hiding behind email and they're not picking up the phone. But if they are picking up the phone, they have to do a good job with that. And that means the voicemail has to be conversational. It has to be a good voicemail. If you're unsure if your voicemail is a good one, leave one for yourself. Pick it up and hear how you sound. When's the last time you did that with your salespeople? You can really lose the opportunity to open a relationship with someone by leaving them a crappy voicemail. And crappy could be delivery, and it could also be in terms of what you say. It could be just not strong enough, not a good reason for why someone should call you. I know I have this list service that calls me like 3 or 4 times a week, and it's different people and they all say the exact same message. Really? You know, do we need lists? Sure, I do. Am I going to buy it from them? No, because they don't care anything about what my needs are, because not one person has said anything that's meant for me. Right. So the what if conversation, like how do you get into this what if conversation? So when you get somebody live on the phone, it's 2 sentences and a question that get to them. And so let's talk for a second about phone calls, and then I'll explain this crazy chart, this crazy picture to you. If you can't get people on the phone, it's probably because you haven't tried, because the people who are trying are finding that it's working. You can get people's cell phone numbers. And cell phone usage. I mean, it showed up in so many of our door openers were saying that they're calling people on cell phones, and it's acceptable now, because if the main number or somebody's direct dial is not rolling over to their cell phone, their cell phones can be available. How are they available? Well, ZoomInfo is a tool that we use. It will often give you cell phone numbers. And if you need a list and you don't have that, call me and I'll help you. There are free resources from your public library that are not quite as accurate as something like that. If you have a library subscription, they will likely have like an Info USA or something like that for free. Probably getting the names and phone numbers from somebody's website, not a good idea, because they don't really have anything there. The email format you can get by going to the press release section of somebody's website and looking up the contact there. That's usually the way you can get that format. And then you can guess as long as you know who the right person is. Other ways to get people, if you can't get them, because certain industries it's really hard to reach people live. So what some of our door openers will do is they'll call a department within a company that tends to answer the phone. So one of our door openers yesterday wrote that he'll call accounts receivable because in a company they tend to answer the phone. And then he'll say, listen, I think I've reached you in error. I'm looking for so-and-so. And that person is usually pretty helpful. We'll look up the person's either direct dial or cell phone number. A lot of times the cell phone numbers are now listed in internal directories because everybody's working, or many people anyway are working from home. And that's one way to get that. You can leave them a message, but please make sure it's a good one. A voicemail message is very fixable. We do voicemail training, happy to help you with that. It's not very expensive, but if you don't do it right, it's it's a real problem. You want excellence in this conversation. You want to, if you're leaving a voicemail, it's 6 sentences, no exceptions, and don't tell me the sentences have to be really long because that doesn't work and you can't get them out. I've written an article about the 6-sentence voicemail. Live dialogue, if somebody answers a phone, it's 2 sentences and a question. So what 2 sentences, what question is going to be the difference? If you look on this diagram, this is conversation dialogue path. So if you ask one question, you're going to be on the dialogue path to the left. If you ask a different question, you're going to be on the dialogue path to the right. So what you say will change the outcome. The questions you ask will change your outcome. If you're not certain what your salespeople are saying when they're on the phone with your most important prospects, it's really time to get down to 1,000 feet and find that out. Because if you change that, it could change your outcome. You'll get the meetings that you want and everything will be different. So I'm going to give you a few examples of change the language, change the outcome, just like change the word, change the outcome. Instead of telling somebody who you just had a conversation with, I'll call you next week, how about saying, how's Thursday at 10 for a meeting? It's so simple. It's so simple. And many people will say, I'll call you next week instead of how's Thursday at 10. I'll follow up with you in 3 months. Instead try what will be different in 3 months. Right, that's a good one for you, Cheryl Beth, with people who want to put that off. What's going to change in I call this flip the switch language, because it'll have somebody think, oh, you're right, nothing will change in 3 months. Let's go ahead and have this conversation. And you just shortened your sales cycle.
That's a Howard Shore question. That's one of his favorite questions. So if you're not going to do anything, tell me what it's going to be like 90 days from now.
Right. So what will change? Well, nothing will change. So it's really important that somebody who feels the importance of moving forward and addressing this now. But it's very easy for somebody to say, call me in 3 months, call me in 6 months. I have 2 other initiatives I've got to get past. So what's the harm in having the conversation now and getting things moving, right? So there are a lot of different ways to peel that back. But if you have somebody who's not really skilled in doing that and doesn't really know to do that, then you're going to be passing up on a lot of opportunities and artificially elongating your sales cycle. You don't want to do that. So I've got a whole section on how do you help the sellers, and probably this belongs in there, but we are starting to put a flow chart together on how you diagnose and fix an individual conversation so that people can get further faster. So if people aren't getting enough meetings, here's one of the things you want to do in terms of your tree. Ask them, are prospects answering and you're not getting further, or prospects aren't answering? Because what you do to fix that is completely different. And so if all you say to your employees is, I need you to get more meetings, well, they may not know what to do differently. They may not understand that they're not, prospects aren't answering, so they need other tactics. They may need a better list. They may need something different, versus prospects are answering, but they're not getting further, which means they're probably their opener is a problem. So what the diagnosis is could be different depending on what's happening. And most sales managers and leaders don't think to ask this level of questioning, but if you do, you can fix this and make somebody who's not successful more successful, and think of how good they're going to feel about themselves. So let's say they're getting someone on the phone, they're getting into a conversation and they're getting shut down before they get the meeting. Well, where are they getting shut down? Start on the left here. Are they getting shut down right when they open? Right? Well, then they may have a delivery problem, but they may have an opener problem. Are they getting past the opener, the 2 sentences in the question, and they're getting into a conversation, they're getting shut down there? Right? So if that's happening so soon, you may have a mismatch between the experience level of the seller and the level of the prospect. That can often happen there. Well, that's fixable. Maybe not with that person, but it's fixable, right? Are they getting shut down at the objection? I remember somebody sent me a while ago a recording of their salesperson who was able to get a CEO on the phone, engage them in dialogue. Isn't that great? And then when the CEO delivered what I felt was a really reasonable objection, the salesperson giggled, and then the CEO hung up. Right. So you think this may not be happening, but I could tell you all sorts of things are happening. Are they getting shut down at the ask? Oh yeah, it'll curl your hair. Like if you have straight hair like mine, it could curl your hair. So are they getting shut down at the ask? Are they just not asking? They're just in this round robin of objections and they never actually say how's Thursday at 10, right? That happens. It's so fixable, but only if you know that it's happening. So there's a little bit about the diagnosis and fixing. We're coming up with this entire flow chart right now. This content will be coming out, and I'm very excited to be able to share it with people, because if you can fix this for them, it clears what we call the path to the cash, and makes things so much easier. Please avoid doing sales poorly and tell your salespeople to do that too, because it's not going to help you at all. Target the person, not the persona. Persona is a marketing term. The person is the individual. That's sales. Make sure you're prepared. Many people aren't. They haven't done their research. If you tell your salespeople they have to make 60 calls in an hour, you're going to get 60 crappy calls, and they're not going to be prepared, and they can't be a constant in somebody's life if they are just churning out. There's a balance between reach and quality. You need the reach, but without the quality, you might as well just not do anything at all. Please avoid crappy voicemails, and definitely don't leave them for me, because I play them in my seminars, and yours may end up turning up if your voicemail is bad. It's easy to fix. Please don't send emails like that. Don't try to read that, because your prospects won't either. It's way too long. So you may have so many important things to say, but you send an email with that kind of length, nobody's going to read it. So make it really digestible. A couple, let's say 2 to 3 sentences max, 2 to 3 paragraphs max. Put your ask in the first sentence, because maybe they're not going to read beyond that. If it sounds like a salesy subject line, save it for, email marketing kind of letters, but not for sales, not for sales. You want to be genuine and authentic. This was yesterday. Now, I was very kind to this guy, Michael. And Michael, if you're on the phone with us today, I apologize. But I did cover your last name. This is actually real. Please avoid sending crappy LinkedIn messages. Look what happened here. Hi, and then contact name first. Could you imagine somebody sent that to me? And then they sent me the same thing that, he probably just outsourced this, and, this is bad salesmanship. But the interesting thing is he says he helps people get appointments. So, yeah, this is not an example of sales well done. Then you want to think about who's going to do this work. Like the work that I just talked about, identifying the target, figuring out the right message, making the calls, doing the follow-up emails, because just sending one email and one voicemail is only the beginning. It could take 8 different touch points over the course of 10 to 12 weeks to get on the radar of your best prospects. And that's okay. If they don't answer you on the first try, do not get discouraged. It is okay. If it takes a little while, these people are busy, and you need to be careful on what you're saying. Who's going to do all this work? Right? So we follow the TTD methodology. The person who does this work has to have the time to do it well. They have to have the talent to do this right, and they have to have the desire to do this. So you may have a salesperson who's awesome at it, but only has 15 minutes of available time a week to focus on it. I could tell you that's not enough. You can have somebody who has all the time in the world and the talent, but would rather put a stick in their eye than do this job. So what's going to happen there is that you're going to have unnecessary peaks and valleys in your revenue generation, because they're going to do a bunch of calls right when they need to fill the top of the funnel. Once the top of the funnel is full, they're going to stop doing those calls. What is really the best way to go about doing this is to have a consistent flow coming into the top of your funnel of the right people, not just any people, the right people, so that they're moving through your funnel at a consistent pace as well. And so that you're closing consistently over time. Time, talent, and desire. Now, there are some real blind spots when it comes to salespeople, especially hunter salespeople. I mean, most people know the difference between the hunters and the farmers. The farmers grow the business and the hunters find the business. But what most people don't know, and is a blind spot, is that in the world of hunters, there are different kinds of hunters. Here's a chart. In our world, there's openers and there are closers in the world of hunters. The closers are great at going on the meetings and getting that to a closed sale, growing that relationship. Now, the openers are really good. They got it in their DNA to open up conversations with people they didn't know before. Well, that's a very rare person to find. I could tell you that because this is the only kind of salesperson we hire here is an opener, somebody who doesn't need to rely on their own network in order to get doors open. And if you hired a closer, but you really need an opener, you're probably going to want to jump out the window, and it's going to take you 6 months to realize it. And that's not a good thing. So you may want to split those functions and have openers opening the door for closers. You may have openers on your team. You may have one person on your team who's just crackerjack at it. Maybe that person should be doing that 100% of the time. Or you may have a bunch of really phenomenal closers, no openers. What are you doing to get the doors open? You can outsource that to a company like ours. So be careful when you go, if you do decide to outsource, there are different companies with different levels of people, different skill levels. You're going to want to identify who you're going after. If you're targeting executive level prospects, hiring an SDR who maybe has a year or two of sales experience is likely not going to be able to hold their own in a conversation with a CEO or a CFO. So make sure there's not a mismatch in that kind of alignment.
Hey, Karen,
Yeah.
I just want to watch. So just a time check. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left.
Yes.
And so I just want to say to folks, if you've got some takeaways or questions that you could share with us in the chat as Karen is continuing to chat, that would be great. And Karen, if there's something additional that you wanted to make sure we got to.
Yes, let's get to how we're going to help sellers who are struggling. And then we're going to hold, we'll answer the questions. And if we don't get to that magic phrase of how you close the unclosable, I'll write an article about it, give it to Cheryl Beth, and she will post it for everybody. Okay, so how do you help sellers who are struggling, right? So I'm just going to give you a couple of these things. This one we talked about, help them identify the path to the cash. Don't just assume that they know which buyers are spending. They may need your help as leaders of your company to identify the right kinds of prospects so they focus their time in the best possible way. Help them diagnose what's not working. And if you're not really sure about how to diagnose it, then call me. I'm super good at this and I love those conversations. So I can help you to figure out where are you having a problem so you make sure to fix the right problem. But don't just expect that if they haven't been able to figure it out that they're going to magically because you tell them to, or because their manager yells at them that they have to do that. They want to do a good job. People don't show up to screw up. They want to do a good job. And if they're not, they need some help on how to go about doing this well. This is for all the leaders and the managers out there. Please stop giving your salespeople non-revenue generating activities that steal time from their revenue generating activities. You know who you are. You ask them to spend 2 hours putting together a report so you can make a decision on something. Well, you just lost 2 hours of outreach. So sellers, if you're on the phone, ask your manager, is this something that they really want you to spend 2 hours on? And managers, please think twice. If you want more revenue, then they have to spend more time on revenue generating activities. There's an N&R exercise on my blog. You can read about that and make sure that you're not giving them things to do that's stealing time. I talked about this a minute ago, align seller talent and skills with the people that you want to target now and make sure that there is alignment there. Early in their sales career, have them target somebody lower. Selling coffee to an office manager, not a problem. Selling something to a CFO, somebody with a year experience is going to have trouble there. Provide them outside help. If you need help getting the top of the funnel full, you can outsource, as I said, to a company like ours. You can give them training. You can give them resources. If they don't know who to contact, get them a list of people. Like, our door openers do not look up email addresses. We have a research department so that our door openers are doing only what they can do. And then you're going to want to monitor leading indicator KPIs, not just KPIs. Let's know ahead of time that you're on track for success. And here are some that we watch. The number of live conversations, but define those. Is it a conversation with a decision maker or is it an assistant? The percent of time they're getting the objection. If they're getting 90% of the prospects that they talk to are saying they're not interested, you likely have a messaging or a targeting problem. So monitor what the percentage is for each objection so you can make changes. The number of open tasks, that's if you're using your CRM, and please use your CRM. It should be mandatory, it's not optional. And identify the open tasks. If they have too many open tasks, they are targeting too broad. They shouldn't have a bunch of open tasks that are just kind of waiting. And then of course, at the bottom, the percent of time on non-revenue generating activities versus revenue generating activities. Okay, and the single easiest way to shorten your sales cycle, as anybody who knows me knows, is to ask for a date and time at every step in the sales process. So let us hold here and answer some questions. Do you want to ask me them, Sharba?
Yeah, so one of the questions that Debbie Albert is continuing to provide a little bit of humor. You've now talked about several different things to do with your sales team. I mean, in your opinion, what is the most important? We talked about identifying, the customer, looking at your pipeline, evaluating your pipeline, the messaging, evaluating your talent. I mean, when folks are trying to focus, Karen, what would be the most important? What have you found to be the Achilles heel that keeps people from selling and building their pipeline?
Yeah, I would say there's not usually just one, but I will choose the most important one. The place where most people get it wrong is target. So they're spending their time, or their sellers are spending their time on prospects who really have no hope of becoming clients, at least not good clients. And that steals time from everything else. So if you can really nail target in a very narrow way, then it becomes somewhat obvious what to say to those people, and then direct your company and your salespeople to make sure that they're spending their time there. There's the 5 planks of door opening success. I have a free seminar on that on my site. You're welcome to it. It'll give you some more information about that. But if you don't nail target, the rest of it is going to be very inefficient.
And let me know again, the offer, you had made an offer to folks earlier about if you wanted to reach out to you to test your gap messaging.
Yeah.
What would they need to do? I actually threw something in the chat about just put CEO Think Tank webinar, but what do you want from them as pre-work?
Yeah, so you would, in one sentence, tell me what you do. In one sentence, tell me who your ideal prospect is, and then give me your gap message. And then probably 15 minutes on the phone is really all we would need. And the other thing is, if you're having trouble diagnosing the reasons why you're not engaging more of your ideal clients, then call me, and I'm happy to share my insights with you on that, whether you need us or you don't.
Yeah.
What I could do, because I know we're coming up on the end of our time together,
Yep.
is I want to give people the contact information for me. And if you need anything from me, here's how to reach me. If you want the ideal prospect worksheet, the gap messaging worksheet, leading indicator KPI list, please let me know. You can write through the website, just take a picture of that. And then also we have virtual prospect meetings, best practices. It's a free webinar. Everybody's got to get real comfortable with how to have these virtual prospect meetings. So I give, not as many of the do's, but definitely a lot of the don'ts. And feel free to reach out to me. My website is there. It's koppconsultingusa.com. KOPP consultingusa.com. And especially if you want to know anything about the door opener service and how we can help you fill the top of your funnel.
Thank you, Karen. And I'll just reiterate, we will be putting out the recording for this. Karen will be sending me a PDF of her slides, so you'll have access to the content. The recording will also be on YouTube, because we've been streaming to YouTube. And we have 2 more events coming up. Dave McGowan is finishing off the year with us. A Lead Like You Give a Damn, to inspire leaders going into 2021. Hopefully it will be an inspirational message for a much better year. And then actually, I'm very excited. One of our alumni clients, Darius Mershaza from the Money Source, who has a new book out, The Core Value Equation, is going to be joining us in January to talk about the invisible scale. So just pop over to ceothinktank.com and check out the events, check out the blogs, and check out the resources that we have. Karen, thank you again very, very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, always.
Absolutely. And again, for those of you that want to reach out to Karen, we'll make sure that you have the email. It's right here as well as in the chat. And she will be happy to help you open more doors. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.